Right. A little random selection of notes from travels in West Africa. We'll see how many I find here. This is 208. I have no hesitation in saying that the gorilla is the most horrible wild animal I have seen. I have seen at close quarters specimens of the most important big game of Central Africa, and, with the exception of snakes, I have run away from them all. But although elephants, leopards, and pythons give you a feeling of alarm, they do not give that feeling of horrible disgust that an old gorilla gives on account of its hideous appearance. 439. Since my return to England, I have read Sir Richard Burton's account of his first successful attempt to reach the summit of the Great Cameroons in 1862. His companions were Herr Mann, the botanist, and Senor Calvo. Herr Mann claimed to have ascended the summit a few days before the two others joined him, but Burton seems to doubt this. The account he himself gives of the summit is, Victoria Mountain is now proved to be a shell of a huge double crater opening to the southeastward, where a tremendous torrent of fire has broken down the weaker wall, and the whole interior and its accessible breach now lay before me, plunging down in vertical cliff. The depth of the bowl may be 360 feet. The total diameter of the two, which are separated by a rough partition of lava, 1,000 feet. ... Not a blade of grass, not a thread of moss breaks the gloom of this plutonic pit, which is as black as Erebus, except where the fire has painted it red or yellow." Unquote. This ascent was made from the west face. I got into the plutonic pit through the southeast break in its wall, and was said to be the first English person to reach it from the southeast, and the 28th ascender, according to my well-informed German friends. 514. By slavery, I mean the quasi-feudal system you find existing among the true Negroes. I do not mean either the form of domestic slavery of Egypt or the system of labor existing in the Congo Free State, although I am of opinion that the suppression of his export slave trade to the Americas was a grave mistake. It has been fraught with untold suffering to the African, which would have been avoided by altering the slave trade into a coolie system. And that's the end of the notes that I'm going to read out. And so that is the end of Travels in West Africa by Mary Henrietta Kingsley, which has been quite the trip. I do know that, though more of a trip for obviously Mary Kingsley, that she wrote two books. This is going from Wikipedia now. She wrote two books, Travels in West Africa, this one, which was an immediate bestseller, and then West African Studies in 1899, both of which gained her respect and prestige within the scholarly community. Some newspapers, such as the Times, under pro-imperialist editor Flora Shaw, refused to publish reviews of her works, though some have argued that such refusals were grounded in the anti-imperialist arguments presented in Kingsley's works. This unlikely explains her frequent unfavorable reception in Europe, because she was both a supporter of the activities of the European traders in West Africa and of indirect rule. It was no doubt success was in small part due to the vigor and droll humor of her writings, which I would agree with. Yeah, and then we get into a whole review thing. I guess I would just like to leave off with the account of that we talk about of her death. So after the outbreak of the Second Boer War, which I will be getting into in my 1901 project, Kingsley traveled to Cape Town in March of 1900, where she treated Boer prisoners of war. And after contributing her services to the ill for about 2 months, she developed symptoms of typhoid and died on the 3rd of June, 1900. So she died of typhoid, of the very kind of diseases that she kind of documented and kind of knew full well what was the death, what was kind of the death rate for white people coming into the countries. Though she also quite notes, we've seen things like that. An eyewitness reported, "She rallied for a short time, but realized she was going. She asked to be left to die alone, saying she did not wish anyone to see her in her weakness. Animals, she said, went away to die alone." And then, in accordance to her wishes, she was buried at sea. This was, I believe, the only favor and distinction that she ever asked for herself, and it was accorded with every circumstance and honor. A party of West Yorkshires, with bands before them, drew the coffin from the hospital on a gun carriage to the pier. Torpedo boat number 29 put to sea and, rounding Cape Point, committed her to the element in which she had chosen to be laid. A touch of comedy which would have amused Kingsley herself was added when the coffin refused to sink and had to be hauled back on board and then thrown over again, weighed down this time with an anchor. So yes, that is kind of how um, she's remembered. And then it talks about her legacy in this Wikipedia article. We'll just take it as is. Kingsley's tales and opinions of life in Africa helped draw attention to British imperial agendas abroad and the native customs of African people that were previously little discussed but misunderstood by people in Europe. The Fair Communist Party formed soon after her death, pressuring for improved conditions for the natives of British colonies. Various reform associations were formed in her honor and helped facilitate governmental change. The Liverpool School of Tropical Medicine founded an honorary medal in her name. In Sierra Leone, the Mary Kingsley Auditorium at the Institute of African Studies, Fora Bay College, University of Sierra Leone, was named after her. And then, yes, we've got published works and all the other stuff. But yes, that has been my journey through Travels in West Africa by Mary Henrietta Kingsley. And I really, really disagree with a lot of things that she says, not surprisingly, for a book that was written was published in 1897. There's just sort of an underlying thing of like, how we isn't it great what the traders, the people who've come in to exploit and make money for us have done, and all that stuff. But I mean, she is somebody who you get the sense is very sincere in her beliefs, has a real affinity for the countryside. Just amazing to have this woman who's like, oh, I am a woman, but I once she got her independence, she went off and did something that she really loved, and as a result, dies at 37, which seems to be not uncommon for the people who are going into Africa at this time from Europe. All right, I will leave it there. More videos later. I guess I have to figure out what I'm going to be reading next. Ciao.